Welcome back, everyone. We're Simply Bitcoin. We break down the news from Twitter, the daily fail, meme review, software releases, hardware releases, and the websites by plebs. We're diving into the numbers. Let's do it.
Number time. Number time is brought to you by Bitcoin 2022. It's going to be the largest Bitcoin conference ever, hosted in sunny Miami Beach, Florida. Chad Saylor, Naeem Bukele, Adam Pack. Awesome speaker list, and you can take advantage of the link down below for 10% off your tickets to Bitcoin 2022.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 720,791. The Bitcoin price, 36,885. Chain rewrite days, 741. Total public lightning capacity, 3,360.2. Moscow time, 2711. And blocks to the halvening, 119,209. Ooh, the numbers, Nico.
The numbers.
They're very spicy.
Very spicy numbers. It's what you said, a little bit of a relief rally. But let's see where it goes. Let's see where this ends up. It's not important if you do what we tell you to do on this show, which is stay humble, stack those sats, don't trade, don't use margin, and have a long time preference, which we're advocates for on this show. And historically, that's what gives you the best amount of return, right? Don't try to time the top. Don't try to time the bottom. Anyways, Phil, check this out. Speaking of not trading, this is a tweet from Giacomo. And this is a screenshot from the infamous bitcointalk.org. It's the forums. And check out the date, November 8th, 2010. And I'm going to read some of it, and then we'll
This is awesome. Yes.
You say that now, but if Bitcoin really takes off, I could see lots of get-rich-quick imitators coming on the scene. Jitcoin, Nitcoin, Witcoin, Titcoin, Shitcoin, some of them are sure to attract users with promises like, why use Bitcoin where you can only generate 50 Bitcoins every few months? Use shitcoin instead and you'll get 51 shitcoins every 2 months. Of course, the cheap imitators will disappear as quickly as those 1990s internet currencies like Flus and Bens, but lots of people will get burned along the way. And what's fascinating about this, right? And we had when we had VJ on the show, we were talking. We pulled out also a post from Hal Finney talking to Satoshi from BitcoinTalk.org, and essentially he was making the case for a $10 million Bitcoin. And now you have someone else from that era also talking about shitcoins, because that's exactly what they do. That's exactly what's happening. It's like, it was so obvious when you were thinking about the game theory back then. There was going to be so many Bitcoin imitators, and they're going to sell you on vaporware, and they're going to sell you on all this garbage, and there's going to be a lot of people that buy into it. And unfortunately, you are buying vaporware, right? You are buying that, right? Like, look at Ethereum. It still doesn't do what it's promoted to do. There's still no ETH 2.0. In fact, I think they've rebranded lately. There was Solana that, again, it did super well in terms of fiat performance, but the blockchain, if you want to call it that, was down for 3 days. A couple weeks ago, so it's it proving centralization. So, man, it's just funny watching these things play out, and I think that Bitcoiners are always going to have to deal with these fugazis, man. It's always going to be there because the incentive to just come up with your own coin and start showing it to everybody and peddling as like this is the next big Bitcoin is so intense. Right, that's why you have these VCs. They're not piling up on Bitcoin companies. They're not investing in Bitcoin companies. They're not investing in Bitcoin because they would be like everybody else in that case, right? There's no edge there. So they look at these shit coins and they use their vast resources to market to everybody. This is the next great Ethereum. This is the next Bitcoin. Bitcoin is old. Bitcoin's a dinosaur. And people, unfortunately, because of the unit bias, people see Bitcoin sitting at, right now it's at 36,900, and they're like, oh, we clearly miss the train, right? We have to, we have to find something else, right? So that's the case, unfortunately. But I think that over time, right, historically, what we've already seen is, dude, nothing trends higher than Bitcoin on a long-term preference. Don't trade your shitcoin versus dollars. What you should be focusing on is your shitcoin versus Bitcoin, right? And if you look at XRP, if you look at Ethereum, they're all in a downtrend versus Bitcoin, right? So again, you might be up in fiat terms, but the real question that you should be asking yourself is, do I have more Bitcoin relatively that I would have had if I just bought Bitcoin instead of this shitcoin? I think the name of the game, even for the shitcoiners, I might add, is having more Bitcoin, right? Even the shitcoiners want to sell their own shitcoin that they created to get more Bitcoin, right? Because that is the signal. That is the scarcest asset that was ever created in the history of mankind. Phil?
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest this, which will most likely be a little bit unpopular, but hear me out, okay? These shitcoin scammers, right, that come up with these ridiculous projects and these ridiculous narratives, right, which I've explained in the past. You know, not all technology needs to be money, right? But you see, these people, they figured out a clever way to get more Bitcoin. So believe it or not, these shitcoiners, okay, a lot of them, they're actually Bitcoin maximalists, but they're morally bankrupt Bitcoin maximalists, okay, because they're willing to do scammy shit, okay, to take your hard-earned Bitcoin and make it their hard-earned Bitcoin, and instead hand you something that doesn't have the qualities. I mean, look, the best meme, one of the best memes I ever saw was when they showed, like, essentially they showed fake Adidas, fake Nikes, and then Bcash, right? Because that's exactly what these shitcoins are, okay? They may look like Bitcoin, okay? They may seem to act like Bitcoin, but when push comes to shove, they are not Bitcoin. And those cheap imitation shoes, right? They'd fall apart in half the time as the real thing. And it's the same thing with these shitcoins. These shitcoins, as Nico alluded to, they're just vaporware. Okay, nobody is actually using them. Okay, the community that is pumping you all of this action, okay, nobody's actually using it. Nobody, like, you'll notice that you're not actually able to go out and spend any of that. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can go to Bitrefill, you can go and get cards, right, where you can convert your Bitcoin to actually use it. There's also stores that accept Bitcoin online. Like, this is the adoption is completely, it's night and day from these shitcoins. And the reality is that, as we've pointed out, they are centralized, right? They're Chuck E. Cheese tokens, and they're just cheap imitations of the real thing. They only exist to serve the people or group that control it. That's it, plain and simple.
100%. 100%. And I think that's what these people, they were just speculating on Bitcoin.org and without anything invested, because their bias wasn't corrupted, because none of these things existed yet. So they were just looking at it, and it's like, yeah, there's going to be imitators that are going to try to copy Bitcoin, and they're going to try to sell you on that. And yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing 12 years later. But anyways, Phil, it's time for the Daily Fail.
The Daily Fail is brought to you by Amber App. Check them out. It is the easiest way to stack sats and app by actual Bitcoiners. The link is down below.
Amber, the smart way to stack sats.
You knew that we were going to have to cover this, right? We had no choice but to cover the tweet that came out from Trezor yesterday, and we are going to start off by diving into this article on Yahoo News, which I don't really like, but it was from CoinDesk, which is also, I don't enjoy CoinDesk either necessarily, but they're as close as we're going to get. We are going to go through a few different articles because there are different pieces to this, okay? What we're talking about is this AOPP protocol, okay, that has to do with essentially identifying non-custodial wallets, okay, and essentially tying them back to your identity on the exchange. So, but keep in mind that would also tie your identity to your wallet as well. Okay, let's dive into this. There's a lot of pieces. Trezor adopts Swiss travel rule protocol for private crypto wallets, Bitcoin and shitcoin wallets. Okay, an automated way of sharing proof that a user owns a private cryptocurrency wallet when transacting with a regulated exchange in Switzerland is being integrated by hardware wallet Trezor. Developed by crypto startup 21 Analytics the Address Ownership Proof Protocol, AOPP, which also works with wallets like Bitbox and Edge, was designed to accommodate the Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority's FINMA implementation of anti-money laundering requirements for cryptocurrency firms. We're gonna circle back to that in a second, but let's just keep that in mind, right? It's always about the anti-money laundering, okay? Here we go. Going beyond the recommendations, Bitcoin and shitcoin requirements in Switzerland include the identification of private wallet transacting with the country's virtual asset service providers, VASPs. The march of AML requirements into the realm of private and non-custodial wallets is something most countries are only at the initial stage of mulling over, often to the horror. Yeah,
I love. Pay attention to the language, Phil.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Look.
No, please.
The march of AML requirements into the realm of private or non-custodial wallets. They're treating that as if it's abnormal. They're treating that as if, oh, dude, self-custody is the norm. Custody is not the norm. All of the evils that have happened are happening today is because you're essentially, if you zoom out, someone else is trusting someone else with their money. Whether that's pension funds, whether that's you trusting a bank to carry your wealth, whether that's you trusting a broker, right, with Robinhood, they are taking custody of those stocks that you own on paper, but you don't actually have actual self-custody. Bitcoin is the only thing that allows you to have complete self-custody, and these legacy media outlets are trying to essentially spin up the narrative as if that is a bad thing, okay? That is a really, really good thing. And don't let them set the narrative. Don't let them set the tone for the argument, because they're going to want you to believe that self-custody is dangerous. It's dangerous for them. It's not dangerous for the people. Phil?
Yeah, and I want everybody, like Nico is alluding to, right, to pay attention to the language. So remember, money laundering, private and non-custodial wallets, right? Okay. So Switzerland and Singapore are already requiring identification for transactions over $1,000 with what the FATFA calls unhosted wallets. Oh, how dare you? How dare you command control of the thing you traded your time for? Disgusting people. Anyways, Switzerland has some extra harsh regulations when it comes to the travel rule, and FINMA was always at the forefront, implementing everything the FATFA publishes very quickly. Way to go, giant circle jerkers. Anyways, when it comes to determining ownership of private wallets, VASPs in Switzerland have been asking users to submit a screenshot of their wallet or conduct a Satoshi test, whereby a specific amount of coins is sent to a verified wallet to confirm their receipt. Another way is manual signing in using a private key, Betschart said. AOPP streamlines and automates that manual signing process. Marek Palatnis, CEO of Satoshi Labs, which is the maker of the Trezor hardware wallet, said in a statement, AOPP makes it simpler and faster for users to withdraw to the safest place for their coins, their Trezor. So this story obviously developed from this point. Okay, and we're just gonna get a bit of a different perspective as well, even though that gives us a nice round. Bitcoin Magazine also chimed in on this. Okay, it's an article from Namcios, and I think it's important to cover because there was certain parts of it that I didn't quite I didn't quite understand, and I think this background is going to help. So here we go. In November 2020, the Dutch central bank, DNB, mandated that cryptocurrency exchanges and service providers in the country required proof from users that the address they were requesting the Bitcoin to be withdrawn to was actually theirs. The measure was enforced by having users provide a screenshot of their wallets or sign a message. The country's oldest cryptocurrency exchange, Bitonic, set in motion a legal action in court soon after to dispute and object to the DNB's resolution, claiming that the requirements were unlawful and should never have been made. In May 2021, the DNB formally acknowledged Bitonic's complaint and revoked the wallet verification requirements. Okay, so this AOPP stuff, anyways. A similar dynamic is in play when it comes to the AOPP. The protocol isn't inherently bad, as it simply seeks to facilitate the enforcement of wallet verification measures in Switzerland by making an interoperable standard available to wallet developers to implement. I don't entirely agree with that, but I understand, right? You know, a knife can be used for, you know, good and bad. So I get that. The double-edged sword. But even though AOPP isn't in and of itself negative, it legitimizes the practice of checking for address ownership and implementing it, opens up a precedent for having the government influence developments in the open source Bitcoin wallet space. This is true. Surveillance and control mechanisms always start small, also true. And there is hardly a way to see ahead of one's time and discover the true direction such requests could take. Therefore, not implementing this standard is an act of sovereignty and responsibility, as it protects users from future and possibly worse surveillance mechanisms being implemented as per the request of regulatory bodies. I think that's a fair, objective take from Bitcoin Magazine, right? But we're going to dive in because, look, the Bitcoin community chimed in on this. The Bitcoin community chimed in, people from the community chimed in yesterday, and we got a response from Trezor today, which, you know, we're going to wrap this up with. So let's continue on. I really liked Samurai's take on this, and they responded back to the AOPP integration in Trezor. So here we go. Here is why Samurai Wallet won't include support for AOPP. Number 1, undermines self-custody. Ironically, proponents of this say this will promote self-custody by providing a regulated pathway. That is nonsense, and by buying into this system, you are legitimizing the concept that self-custody requires permission and compliance. This is correct. Number 2, reveals a weak immune system. The fact that so many developers of non-custodial wallet hardware have seemingly bought into this system will only serve to bolster further incursions by regulators in the future, as compliance among developers was high previously. Number 3, further undermining of the pseudonymity of Bitcoin, tying identifying information to what is supposed to be a pseudonymous UTXO is a serious privacy concern by itself. Providing regulators with a cryptographic proof of your identity to a certain output is over the line. And that is correct. Okay, this is definitely a slippery slope. Okay, because the amount of effort that we could be putting in to complying with this garbage, we could be putting in to fight this garbage, to show the government, right, and to show these entities why they're wrong and a better way of doing it. Okay? So, anyways, let's continue on. So today, we got a response from Trezor. We will remove AOPP in our next Trezor Suite update in February. More on our decision. Let's dive in. This is a great decision. Unfortunately, I couldn't do the good highlighting because Medium sucks and they don't let you use your own highlighter and they're evil. Anyways, a decision on AOPP. Trezor will remove AOPP from Sign and Verify and provide a guide to manually verify addresses. That's right. If you are cucked into having to do this garbage nonsense, this shouldn't be part of the default software. Sorry, not sorry, okay? It should not be the least security by default. It should not be the least privacy by default. This is a huge mistake that we've made from day one. Anyways, it's my own opinion, right? I'm not saying it's part of the article, so here we go. After careful consideration of recent feedback, we will be removing Address Ownership Proof Protocol, AOPP, in the next Trezor Suite update. The relevant pull request has already been submitted on GitHub. Removing it will allow us to return focus to projects and products that will have greater impact on privacy, security, and usability combined. Why are you removing AOPP? We underestimated how this feature would be received, and we are against the regulations that concern AOPP. Adopting AOPP was a small step toward improving usability for a portion of our customers with restricted access to Bitcoin. It was not a step taken due to any external pressure, regulator or otherwise, and no similar implementations are planned. As a proudly independent company, our decisions are always made in support of individuals. In this case, AOPP benefits only a small number of customers, while many more customers are concerned with its inclusion amounts to ideological signaling in favor of regulators. This is not and will never be the case. Don't get me wrong, I I appreciate that they are deciding to decline going further with this. I really do. But unfortunately, what happens a lot of times when you own a business, okay, is that you feel the pressure of coercion. And sometimes, right, like sometimes you do something that you think is going to be right, or sometimes maybe you think it's not going to get noticed, you know, so much. And it does. But that has to do with the Bitcoin community, right? And the types of people that Bitcoiners are. Anyways, let's continue. It's always better to buy Bitcoin without KYC, but it needs to be made easier. And that is absolutely true. In the meantime, many, if not most people, keep their Bitcoin on exchanges, which must change. Also true. You know, that's why we always advocate you have to run your own node, Bitcoin Core, get a hardware wallet. All right. They're talking about their upcoming features here, and for us to have our say. This is kind of a wishy-washy part. It kind of like puts the blame on, well, we were doing this for months and nobody said anything. Yeah, but it wasn't released for months. You may have been working on it for months and telling people, but until it's officially in the product, nobody really has a reason to complain, because there's plenty of stuff that developers work on that don't necessarily make it into the product. You're not going to sit there and raise the flag, right at the beginning if you don't really know what's coming. Anyways, that's my own personal opinion on this. The question of whether we should support AOPP has been discussed publicly for almost a year with no opposition. We welcome public scrutiny of projects we are considering for implementation and the valuable feedback this process generates. Our company operates with maximum transparency, and we did not expect this feature to be controversial. We encourage you to use our public channels like GitHub in future to discuss new features which are being considered and worked on ahead of their release. So just to wrap it up, our February Trezor Suite release will remove all code related to AOPP. Everything AOPP did can still be done using sign and verify alone. We will soon publish a guide on how to manually verify an address for exchange withdrawals for customers who need it.
So now, if sign and verify could do that alone, why the F? Why did they implement it? Why?
It's always to see how much it and look, I'm not necessarily blaming them personally or whatever it is, but I'm just saying it's always just to see how far you can get away with, right? Just a little more. Just a little more, right? Because think about it. Oh, well, if they're willing to take this, then we can move on to the next step. Anyways, before I wrap up and we get into talking about this, I just want to go back to something that we talked about during that initial article, right? Why this is being implemented. Okay, and we've debunked this already. We had Dr. Ron Paul on here, KYC AML expert that destroyed it. Why do they want this? To stop money laundering. So, 5 largest money laundering scandals of all time. The 5th, Bank of Credit and Commerce International, 23 billion. Noro, 70 billion. Danske Bank, 229 billion. Standard Chartered Bank, 250 billion. And Wachovia Bank, $380 billion. These are the institutions that are champions of implementing these measures, okay? It guards their moat. It protects them. All of these measures protect the institutions that uphold and support them. This has nothing to do with you. This has nothing to do with your protection. It's quite the opposite. It's to take more and more from you and to put us into a smaller and smaller corner. Okay? It's not people like me and Nico that have the billions of dollars to facilitate this money laundering. Okay? It's the banks. It's the networks. They have the ability to facilitate this money laundering, not us. So we are being fooled and we are being scammed into totalitarian, psychotic clown world behavior. And it's just so pathetic. And don't get me wrong, going back to Trezor, I appreciate that they've withdrawn from what they, from AOPP. But the fight's only begun. This is just, it's the one of many fights. There's still at least 4 or 5 other wallets that still have it implemented. Bitbox, which is out of Switzerland. I'm assuming that the majority of their customers possibly are local. So that could be why. But even I think Blue Wallet as well. Anyways, it's, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. And unfortunately, we're placing our energy in the wrong thing, okay? Rather than laying down and dying and saying, okay, we're just going to give up to all this noise, we need to take that same energy and apply it to fighting these behaviors, because we can show beyond the shadow of a doubt that these measures do not prevent money laundering in any way in comparison to what they cost. They actually ruin more people's lives than they help.
Yep, and we did the research for that. We had a KYC AML expert. Definitely go check out that episode. It's with Dr. Ron Paul, not the politician, but he's a doctor nonetheless. And he did all the research when it comes to KYC and AML, and the conclusion that he came to is, look, it stops less than 0.01% of crime, right? There's huge compliance industries born out of this, and it gives the government tremendous amount of control. Now, I'm going to reference the Yahoo article that you started with, Phil. They are trying to set the tone, set the narrative that self-custody is this bad thing, right? Bitcoin, the most powerful thing that you could do in Bitcoin is take self-custody, is taking custody of that Bitcoin yourself. What you're doing is you're taking the power away from powerful institutions, the government, and what you're doing is that you're giving it back to the person, the individual. So they're trying to make it out that this is dangerous. This is dangerous to democracy. This is dangerous to civilization. No, it's dangerous to the bureaucrats. It's dangerous to the central planners, right? And self-custody takes away their ability to hurt you. And if everyone takes self-custody, it actually makes it very difficult for them to hurt you, right? It changes the power dynamic from the collective, from the mob, from the bureaucracy, back to the individual. That's why there's so much pressure. We've been covering this. We've been on top of this, right? When we told you when the South Korean exchange made it illegal for you to take self-custody, right? They would just rather you send your Bitcoin, your paper Bitcoin, to and from hosted wallets, right? It's a non-hosted wallet. What does that mean? That means that one giant bureaucracy, one institution holds all the Bitcoin and you're just trading the paper Bitcoin? No. No. Bitcoin in itself, just Bitcoin network, the reason it's so successful, right? And this is why we're strong advocates for decentralization above all, which only the Bitcoin network has done successfully, right? Which is why we want the hash rate to continue going up, which is why we want the number of nodes to continue going out. Decentralization empowers the individual. And they would like you to think that somehow they could regulate Bitcoin. No! The Bitcoin network is unregulatable. If it was regulatable, then it would defeat the purpose of Bitcoin. It can't be corrupted by humans. Anybody could make a Bitcoin wallet. You could just download it and all of a sudden you have a Bitcoin wallet. Governments, bureaucracies would like you to think that that's not the case. That is exactly the case. I don't care where you are. Okay? You could live anywhere and you could download Bitcoin software and you could have a Bitcoin wallet. Period. Right? Their system is a system of exclusion. Right? And this isn't just me speculating. This isn't me just saying this. El Salvador became Bitcoin legal tender, and Bitcoin became legal tender in El Salvador. And in less than a year, there was already more Bitcoin wallets than legacy bank accounts. Why do you think that is? More than 60% of the people on planet Earth are deemed unbankable by their system and their rules and their regulation. Bitcoin is for them. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to essentially morph the Bitcoin network into a branch of the existing legacy financial system. And they would like you to think that's even possible. But the truth is that it's not possible. This is why open source is important. This is why decentralization is important. Now, while a lot of channels focus on shitcoins and this is your new get rich quick and this is whatever, this channel we focus on the revolution to free mankind, the peaceful revolution. And the peaceful revolution starts by you as an individual taking self-custody without having to ask anybody for permission. And this like, think about how crazy this is, because they would like you to think that, yes, that address is like a bank account. You could just send that Bitcoin to another address. And they would like you to believe it's like every single Bitcoin address you send it to, you have to create. No, that's not the case, dude. Bitcoin is like cash. If you hand someone cash, right, do you have to report? Yes, there's systems in play for a large amount of cash, and that's what they're trying to morph Bitcoin into. but don't allow them to set the tone. Things weren't always like this. When they implemented the Bank Secrecy Act and back in the 1970s, the $10,000 rule, right, which is any cash transaction over $10,000, you'd have to report it. Well, when that was implemented, $10,000, if you adjust for inflation, today has a value of about 70 grand. Right? So again, it's what Phil was saying. When the regulations start, it's just a little bit at once. And then a couple years later, not too long ago, the Biden administration wanted every single transaction over $600 to be reported to the IRS. When it started, it was 70 grand. Nowadays, it's $600. And then in 10 years, what is it? Every single transaction gets reported to the government. Don't allow the bureaucracy to set the narrative and the tone. This is a battle between slavery and freedom. What they want you is to be enslaved, and Bitcoin protects you from that. Don't allow them to set the tone. We believe at Simply Bitcoin, we want a world, an open monetary network for the world that doesn't care where you're born, doesn't care where you're from, doesn't care what your skin color is. You could partake in the Bitcoin network. Their system, as much as they would like to make you believe that they have this moral high horse and they are this amazing thing, without them the world would burn down, excludes more than half of the planet because of where they're from, or what their skin color is, or what their religion is. That is their system. It's a system of exclusion and slavery. Bitcoin is a system of freedom and inclusion for everybody. And these people, do not allow them to set the tone. The Financial Action Task Force is a bureaucratic, unelected institution no one's ever heard of, and they get to decide and dictate what the rules are for everybody else on how people should transact or not. These are the same people that are behind the IMF, the same type of bureaucratic elites that they're better than you, that are dictating to El Salvador, a sovereign country, whether Bitcoin should be legal tender or not. These are those psychopaths. Do not even acknowledge what they have to say. No, just say no. And this is why Bitcoin toxicity and the amount of people that talk shit about it is so important. When Marathon announced OFAC compliant blocks, aka censoring, right, based on what the US government decides is a good country that can't transact or a bad country that can't transact, they wanted to start censoring transactions. It was the community that pushed back. The community against once pushed back, we figured out, holy shit, there we go again. They're trying to censor based on what some powerful bureaucratic elite gets to decide what is okay, what is not okay. Fuck the central planners. Opt out, buy Bitcoin, take self-custody, and make a ruckus when they try this again. They want to enslave you. This is what that is. Stop with the guise of, oh, money. No, we brought the receipts. We did the research. Their laws do not stop money laundering. It does not stop crime. In fact, it facilitates it because it tells the criminal, if I check these boxes, my money's now clean. So don't allow them. They answer to nobody. Don't allow them to set the tone. Don't allow them to set the narrative. They do not want what's best for you. In fact, I would even go on a limb and say they hate you. So fuck this, dude. Fuck this. F these people. I'm glad we got this small win, but this is just the beginning, and you guys need to prepare, and the way that you prepare is you take your Bitcoin off the exchange when you buy it and take it into self-custody. Preferably a hardware wallet, right? So you, at least you have, you know, you at least you separate it from the internet, right? And that's it. That's how we win this. Everybody taking self-custody. You defund the beast. You defund the monster. Don't let them make you believe that what you're doing is bad. No. What you're doing is bad for them, but it's not bad for the individual. Anyways. Phil, there was a meme review today. The daily meme review is brought to you by Citadel 21. This is the new cover. Check it out. It's beautiful. Every volume has a different cover. And of course, it's by Bitcoiners. It's by toxic, savage Bitcoiners. There's articles, there's stories, really cool stuff. And they're scarce. There's only 1,000 copies made per volume. Get your print of Citadel 21 today. This first meme is brought to us by Amanda. Let's check it out. She wanted us to review it, and this is central banks and governments.
Let's take a look.
And that's Bitcoin. The guy is Bitcoin.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, this thing did have sound. Okay, she took it out for us because we obviously copyright, you know, in YouTube. So, yeah. More effective with the sound. Oh.
Fun.
Actually, it's pretty well done. This guy's a real trooper, huh? Go Bitcoin.
Go Bitcoin. Oh, he has his other leg. Oh, they're screwed.
Okay, that's it.
They're screwed.
He's gone. Well done.
Highly accurate. Very good meme. Anyways, next one is by Copper Nixon. This is Phil's other account. Credit where credit is due. ETH does have one use case. ETH's connection to the World Economic Forum and endless LOLs, Bitcoiners stacking sats. Oh, I like that. I like that.
Oh.
Next one is by Odell. KYC is the first shot of a long war. And, right, it's Paul Revere saying the British are coming. Very famous, right? But again, it's the same vibe, right? Same revolution of freedom. Anyways, next meme by Greg Zag. Anon is so cute. Why won't he come out of his room and talk to us? I don't know. He's been talking about something called the Great Reset and how he won't eat the bugs. Alex Jones, S9s, Block Clock, Bitcoin grenades. Absolutely hilarious. All right, next one's by Pubby. Just another day on Bitcoin Twitter. I like bits more than sats. They aren't the same thing. Well, the hell is the difference? There are 100 sats in a bit. Stop confusing me. Accurate. I don't know what, like, I think Bitcoiners are just boring. Yeah. Executive order regulating Bitcoin. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second, right? Okay. This is what this is what the first meme by Amanda said, right? Just, I don't think they understand. I don't think governments understand this yet, right? Bitcoin can't be regulated. And that's the whole point. No one, I don't care who you are, should have the right to tell another person whether they cannot transact or not, right? Same principles as freedom of speech, right? Doesn't matter if you're the all-knowing bureaucracy or the government, right? You don't get to decide what someone's speech is okay or not, right? As much as these social media companies would like to say that's misinformation, that's whatever, the problem with that is that the person that gets to decide what is information or not ends up becoming tyrannical because they get to, they start to becoming, oh, I know what's better than everybody else. No, the individual should get to decide what is and what's best for him. And this whole idea where it's like, oh, dangerous things happen. Listen, the people are smart, okay? And they're going to decide what is true and what is not in the free market of ideas, okay? As much as they would like you to believe, oh, these people are stupid, they're moronic, they wouldn't know better without us. Bullshit. Same principles apply to Bitcoin. And anyways, for that, I'm going to give it the control key. Yeah, exactly. Deep. What about you, Phil?
I like that. The control key, very deep. Bit of a different take, even though I love those memes. The individuals, I agree with you. Individuals can be intelligent, but groups are essentially how could I say this? They're essentially the accumulation of the lowest common denominator. So unfortunately, groups are quite often stupid, but individuals can be very smart. Yeah, it's because this thing called groupthink takes over. Anyways. My score for these memes are these very trusty and helpful pliers.
Ooh. A control key and pliers. That's deep. Read into it because there's a lot of substance there.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know, right? Anyways, guys, we want to know, do you agree with our scores? Do you disagree? Let us know down in the comment section. And of course, make sure to subscribe to us on alternative video platforms because we do say things that piss off people in high places like rumble.com and our personal favorite, bitcointv.com. They don't censor there because Bitcoin TV. And of course, make sure to join our Telegram group and link us some dank Bitcoin memes so we could review them on the Bitcoin meme review. Because if not, then we wouldn't have a meme review without you linking us Bitcoin memes. But anyways, Phil, it's time for the Daily News. The Daily News is brought to you by CryptoCloaks.com. They make the best 3D printed Bitcoin merch, like the 3D printed Bitcoin Honey Badger. Opens up, you put your favorite hardware wallet, and it also comes in 3 different sizes. Really cool stuff, and you can take advantage of the link down below for 5% off anything on the store, CryptoCloaks.com. The battle for freedom is heating up. The peaceful revolution man, it's progressing, to say the least, right? Biden administration to regulate Bitcoin as a matter of national security. Ooh, it's all, when they're about to take away your freedoms, they say it's for national security. Yep. Anyways, the White House wants to bring order to the haphazard approach that is currently being employed by regulators to Bitcoin and shitcoins. The White House wants to set out a cohesive set of policies to regulate Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, as current legislation and its enforcement are scattered across sectors and agencies according to multiple reports. The Biden administration will release an executive order in the coming weeks to task federal agencies with asserting the risks and opportunities that Bitcoin and shitcoins pose. The order is set to come under the umbrella of national security efforts as the administration seeks to analyze Bitcoin and shitcoins and employ cohesive regulatory framework that could cover Bitcoin, shitcoins, stablecoins, NFTs, reported Thursday. This is designed to look holistically at the digital space and develop a set of policies that give coherency to what the government is trying to do in this space. Get the F out of the space. Because digital assets don't stay in one country, it's necessary to work with other countries on synchronization. I think they're very accurate when they say that. Now, the issue that they have, right, and we covered this when it came out a couple days ago, but the issue that they have, right, is that I don't think that federal governments or centralized governments are going to be able to replace Bitcoin's incentives. So what we've been saying on this show for about a year now is that on the federal level, it's likely that Bitcoin is to become legal tender last. But on a state level, right, it's likely to become legal tender first. And why is that? The incentives that Bitcoin provides. We've been saying that for many, many months now. We actually thought it was going to be Texas that was going to be one of the first, but it was actually Arizona that just came out and said that, hey, check this out. This is in the State Senate of Arizona, SB 1341. It's by Senator Wendy Rogers, and let's check out what she had to say. Be enacted by the legislature of the state Arizona, Section 1, Title 1, Arizona revised status is amended by adding Chapter 9 to read. Legal tender in this state consists of all the following: any medium of exchange that is authorized by the United States Constitution or Congress for the payment of debts, public charges, taxes, and dues, specifies issue at any time by the U.S. government, any specie that a court of competent jurisdiction rules by, a final unparalleled order to be within the scope of state authority to make legal tender. And what are they talking about? They are talking about Bitcoin. And to get specific, Bitcoin means a decentralized peer-to-peer digital currency in which a record of transactions is maintained on the Bitcoin blockchain, right? That's what they're talking about. So Wendy Rogers just said in the bill, doesn't mean it's going to pass, but essentially it's starting, right? We see governors that are running for people that are running for the governor of Texas. They're also advocating, we want to make Bitcoin legal tender. Now, this is going to cause conflict between states and the federal government, like we've been telling you guys was going to inevitably happen. Bitcoin takes away power from the centralized federal government, takes power away from the federal government, and it gives it back to the states, right? So I suspect this is going to heat up. I have no idea whether this bill is gonna pass or not. But as Nayib Bukele anticipated, and as we have been predicting, right, Bitcoin is going to start to get political in the United States very quickly. And if it happens in the United States, you could bet your bottom dollar it's going to start happening on other places around the world, right? We reported a couple days ago, essentially how Russia went from the central bank wanting a ban to Putin basically saying, hey, we could mine this, right? no one is going to be able to replace the incentives of Bitcoin. But these giant bureaucracies are going to hate it. Why? Because it takes away power away from them, and it gives it back to the free market, and it gives it back to individuals, right? And these giant central planners, these giant bureaucratic central planners won't like that, because it's going to take away their ability to plan, which resort and that power comes from the fiat money printer, right? But it's not also Arizona firing back, right? We had Senator Cynthia Lummis responding to the America Competes Act, right? Something that was snuck into the bill that would give the Treasury, which we covered this a couple days ago. I think it was not yesterday's episode, it was the day before, but essentially it would give the Treasury unchecked power to essentially make Bitcoin illegal overnight, right? They want to have that in their back pocket. They want to have that in case Bitcoin catches on, right? They want you using the US dollar, because if you use the US dollar, they could steal value from you to pay for whatever crazy idea, whether that's war in Ukraine or some type of social program that these people have concocted that does not work if people aren't using your currency, right? Their power stems from the ability to manipulate their populace's monetary policy, and that gives these giant nation states the ability to essentially steal from their population, so that a bureaucratic elite group could essentially dictate what that country should do or not. With Bitcoin, it takes away that power. It protects you from them, right? We have Senator Cynthia Lummis. She's one of the Bitcoin senators. I wanted to share a few thoughts about House Democrats' version of the America Competes Act, which is raising alarms across the financial industry. This provision would give the Treasury Secretary and those she deputizes unilateral unlimited power to ban any type of financial asset that has a foreign link without public notice and without any time limit. It doesn't say explicitly, but this is a direct attack on the digital asset industry. The Treasury Department already had a broad authority in this areas, but it has a strict time limit and a public notice requirement. Should this provision remain in the bill, we should really rename it the America Fails Act. The provision stifles innovation and competition and feels more like something the Chinese Communist Party would impose on the industry. I would not stand by and let the heavy hand of the government pick winners and losers. If we go down this path, we threaten our own position as global financial leader. I'm talking with my colleagues in the Senate and with the people of the Treasury to make my concerns known. The government does not need to make financial decisions for the American people, which is what we're talking about, right? This is what we're talking about. Our $30 trillion national debt should be first hint at that. So you as an individual are expected to pay your debts in a timely manner, but governments, they could be $1 trillion, they could spend $1 trillion more than they're taking in taxes just because they're governments. That's okay, right? They deserve that type of power, right? And now essentially this power that the Treasury is trying to sneak in once again in a must-pass bill, they essentially want to have the ability without the public being able to say otherwise. They want they want to have the ability of say, no, Bitcoin is illegal, right? Which is why it's so important for states to take matters in their own hands, right? We would want to see Bitcoin become legal tender in Arizona. We would want Bitcoin to become legal tender in Texas. We would want Bitcoin to become legal tender in Florida, right? Because essentially what that sets up is a situation like the marijuana industry, right? Where marijuana is illegal on a federal level, but on a state level, it's actually legal in some states, right? So, and essentially what happens is the federal government starts to lose power in that. Yes, they could, go to California and start closing down certain head shops, but because they're not there all the time and because it's not illegal on a state level, there's always going to be another head shop that pops up. Why? Because it's legal on a state level. Now, this is much different than marijuana because, again, this is the federal government's main source of power, their ability to print money out of thin air. And Bitcoin is a direct attack on the fiat money printers. So I suspect that as a wounded animal, the more they get trapped into a corner, the more vicious they get, right? So you're already hearing the words national security. You're already hearing the words unhosted wallet. You're already hearing the words of, using these very scary terms to essentially make the zombies that are still reading legacy media, that are really the puppet talking arms of the governments, really, right? They're captured to make them believe. It's like, oh, yeah, you have an unhosted wallet. How could you? You have to use only a hosted wallet by these approved exchanges of the government. Like, no, dude, right? Which is why it's important that we keep fighting back, which is why it's important that we keep supporting Bitcoin politicians, especially on the local level. So if the heavy hand of the federal government ever decides to do a thing, they're going to learn very quickly that, hey, this is Bitcoin is much more than a technology. It's an idea. It's an idea of freedom. It's an idea of, hey, guess what? I'm not going to let you hold my wealth anymore. No, 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 no. That's not going to work, right? So again, like we've been saying on this channel, and this is why we've been focusing more so on the geopolitical news, right, is that there's a revolution that's going to take place. The fight for freedom is taking place right now. And we suspect that within the next 5 to 10 years, it's just going to heat up. We are definitely in the then they fight you, right? We're not in what is it? First they ridicule you, then no, they ignore you at first, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, then you win. We are definitely in the beginnings of the then they fight you. It's definitely going to get a lot scarier before it gets better, and this is why it's so important that you take self-custody of your Bitcoin. Don't give up your power. Phil?
Soon, Bitcoin financial terrorism. All right, we know that's the next step, right? Like this is just ridiculous because they're going to throw, right? We've seen they're failing with the ESG FUD, okay? Like what's his name, Klaus Schwab, right? And his band of like environmental clowns. These, they're doing what they can, but it's not working very well. So this is the next thing, right? Now it's national security. Now it's a matter of patriotism. All of a sudden, it's going to be a matter of life and death. They're going to look. It's like you said about the wound, the wounded animal. Like they're gonna do whatever they can, right, to get out of essentially to maintain their power. But what's really scary to me, right? What's really scary to me is that this institution, which would benefit so much more from the adoption of Bitcoin, it actually would. Like, think about it. By making the country stronger, right? By creating these structures properly, it actually does make things better for the future generations, which is supposed to be the goal, right?
It doesn't matter. I mean?
It doesn't. I know it doesn't matter, but that's the bullshit that they try to feed us.
Governments would rather their people stay poor than give up power, and this is essentially the
but
light
it's psychotic.
It is psychotic. This is the light of truth that's being shined by Bitcoin on governments, and governments like, no, it's for your own good, and then you're just like, nah. And then at the same time, we're watching the death of their media as well, right? Recently, the last week, it was the war drums against Ukraine has been spitting up. That's the thing. Social media exists. So people are allowed to talk freely again with each other. So their ability to set the narrative, set the tone is greatly diminished. I suspect that in 2003, if social media was around, I don't think there would have been a war in Iraq. But their ability to set the tone, this is what you should think. They're captured, the newspapers, articles, whatever. They don't have that ability is greatly diminished. And now you incorporate Bitcoin into the mix. Now you don't even need the government to transact. You're not even using their money, period. Right? So it's like, man, but it's like, these leaders, these elites, these bureaucrats that have been used to operating in a certain way for so long, dude, they're going to short circuit. They're going to be like, what do you mean there's nothing we could do? What do you mean we can't use violence to get our own way, to coerce these people? What do you mean? This doesn't make sense. And they're going to short circuit, right? And yeah, go ahead, Phil.
This brings up the question, right? Because let's face it, with marijuana, at the end of the day, marijuana is not a threat to the federal government in any way, shape, or form. Okay? So they don't really, I mean, look, they don't really care. But you see, Bitcoin is. So what measures, right? Like, I think that we're going to see, like, the real claws from the beast in this with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, unlike marijuana, does affect them And they are the ones that have to change, right? Like we always say, you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And we mean that when it comes to governments too, you know? So I'm very curious as to what draconian measures they are going to attempt on the states. Because look, now here we go. Now we've got Arizona. Right? Who's next?
I mean, if they could try. Like the thing is, they could try. Biden could try signing an executive order
making what can they try?
Making Bitcoin illegal, but it's just that.
I think that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
It's an executive order, dude. It's nothing. They would need to convince Congress to essentially agree to pass a bill that actively hurts people's ability to save because it's taking bureaucrats' power away. I would absolutely agree with you, Phil. I think that is the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think that's the revealing nature. It's like the costume's off, right? They're not even hiding anymore. They're threatened, and they want to protect themselves more than do what's right for their people. And then that completely destroys the narrative of government, right? Government is not for the people. It's for a group of people, right? And then everyone else go to hell, right? So this is the power of Bitcoin. It's so freaking, it changes everything. And go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just thinking something stupid. I was thinking if the government wants to start earning money, they could start a clothing line called Take Your Shit.
Yep.
You know, it'd be a good one, right?
It would be a really good one.
And like their logo could just be a hand in a pocket, you know, or in a cookie jar.
Anyways,
these are the things I think of.
Guys, this is why it's important that you take Bitcoin into self-custody, or let's use their words, a non-hosted wallet that only belongs to you. Because I think that when the hammer hits, man, it's going to slam down viciously, and they're going to just spin up the media machine. But unfortunately for them, people don't believe it anymore. They don't believe the media machine. So it's like, I don't know how they're going to start pouting out their propaganda. They don't have the means that they used to have, right? People are not listening to the collective media anymore. Now they're tuning into individual content creators. This is why it's so important for people like Joe Rogan to keep being independent, keep doing their thing. But the incentives align for him to keep doing his thing, right? He is his own boss. There is no boss on top of him, right? Anyways, let's see how this plays out. But anyways, Phil, there was an open source software release today. Why don't you tell everybody about it?
Software releases. The software releases are brought to you by CipherSafe. Check them out, cyphersafe.io. Store your seed in the Cypher wheel or the Cypher grid. Both come with punch tool and tamper-resistant wire. The link is down below. All right, we've got Lightning Pool version 0.5.4 alpha that was released. That's down below. Guys, rain or shine, we post unless we tell you like we did yesterday that we're not posting. Fuck you, Greg. Anyways, you can find us audio only on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, guys, that was our show. If you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And, of course, if you want to continue hearing the catastrophic fails from these giant bureaucratic machines and the Bitcoin news from the pleb perspective, definitely consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin, and we'll see you tomorrow, guys, for a brand new episode.
Bitcoin is a settlement layer for the truth.